This week's surveillance report covers a federal court blocking Texas's age verification law. Yes, a Christmas miracle. AI industry is now acting like big oil in very weird ways. AI police cameras being exposed to the internet, and some holiday special stuff on cassette tapes and other things to go offline this season, as well as our typical Defense Bulletin. Welcome to the Techlore Surveillance Report, your essential weekly tech news, delivering deep analysis on the latest threats to security, privacy, and digital freedom, empowering you all to reclaim control and defend your rights. And yes, this is officially a Christmas special. I am recording on Christmas Day, and I'm really excited to be here and still give you all the news. This might not be released on Christmas Day, but it is recorded. I'm excited to record today. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into the highlight story. So I talked about this not that long ago on this channel, how Texas proposed this new law that would essentially mandate Apple and Google to have to come forward and age verify any person who wants to download anything on the App Store. No, not just porn. No, not just bad things, whatever they're trying to justify the stuff with. Literally calculator apps, weather apps, just anything from the App Store. In order to use the App Store, you have to be age verified. And they were trying to mandate this on the operating system / App Store level, which for a lot of these platforms are almost one and the same thing. But in the meantime, a judge has just straight up blocked this altogether, which is fantastic news. I'll talk about why this doesn't mean this fight is over, but let's get into it. So a federal judge has blocked a Texas law requiring mobile app stores to verify users' ages from taking effect on January 1st, which would have happened literally next week. Judge Robert Pittman wrote that the statute is akin to a law that would require every bookstore to verify the age of every customer at the door, and for minors require parental consent before the child or teen could enter, and again when they try to purchase a book. He still hasn't ruled on the merits of the case, but his decision to grant a preliminary injunction means he believes its defenders are unlikely to prevail in court. So some important context that you can see on screen. If you are on the video version, you'll see that the actual order is here. And just to kind of clarify what's going on here, because this can seem a little bit confusing, this was originally proposed by Texas, essentially, as a state. And they were saying, hey, Apple, Google, you guys have to age verify your app stores, and that is now a mandated thing. And so they said, fine, we'll do it because we have to respect the law, but we're also going to be suing you guys. And so they did sue them. And so that is part of that exact lawsuit. So when you read this order, if you go online, it's going to say Computer and Communications Industry Association. The two predominant people behind that association are Apple and Google. So just know that when you read that, you can kind of use that. It's not technically correct, but you can kind of use that synonymously with Apple and Google as the plaintiffs versus Texas, essentially, via Ken Paxton, who's the Texas Attorney General. So essentially, this judge has come forward, Judge Robert Pittman, and he said, hey, yo, based on what I'm seeing right now, it really seems like there might be a real case here that these tech companies have. And so I'm going to go ahead and actually stop what Texas is trying to do so we can actually make a final decision on this. So the final decision still needs to happen. And given the way things have been going, I guess we'll see what direction that heads. I hope it heads in the positive direction. But this is a huge temporary win. This means that January 1st, all of you people in Texas will not have to age verify yourself to still use and install apps. And that is a big win for now. So I am hopeful. We should be watching this, and we should be very careful about what happens with this, because this could set massive precedent. They are not the first state that's proposed similar things. We've seen similar things in Utah and Louisiana, and even California has toyed around with the idea as well. So we need to be very careful with these age verification laws, because age verification laws, especially on this app store level, is the only way to download apps on these platforms, right? On iOS, there is no side loading in the US. We'll talk about other places now that is no longer a thing. But in the US, that is still very much a thing. And even on Android, we're seeing Google attempt to clamp down on Android so that they really want only people to download from the Play Store. Now, I'm sure a lot of you in our audience are already saying, well, that's why I use this different ROM or I use this other app store. But you have to remember that a huge majority, if not almost effectively everyone who's on Android is getting apps from the Play Store. So it's important to think about the broader implications of these things. And it's quite dangerous stuff to try to age verify everything going on everybody's device and every app that they download. Just to really put the nail in the coffin on this for now, Apple, this is from TechCrunch, has paused its App Store changes in Texas after the court blocks age assurances law. So yeah, Apple has already been baking in some of these APIs that reports to apps and third-party developers your age to make sure you're actually able to use the app, all these different things. But they've paused all of this as of right now because of that new order. So for me, the big takeaways of this story, A, celebrate a little bit. B, still keep an eye on it. It is not over. It's far from over, probably. And C, I think it's really important for everyone to understand the importance of politics and the legal landscape. I hear a lot of people saying privacy isn't political, or it's, but I think what people are really trying to say is that privacy, digital rights, all these things are bipartisan, but they are inherently political. All the things that Apple and Google are able to get away with are because of whatever legal landscape allows them to do what they want to do. And I'm having an interview coming out with someone from the Free Software Foundation of Europe who is pretty much leading a huge amount of the legal side of things in the Digital Markets Act. And he even talks about how there's good and bad regulation, and the EU does some good and some bad. Also, most importantly, goes the other way. Governments can require companies to do things that are very bad for you. And this would be an example of bad regulation, where Texas is requiring Apple and Google to have to do a lot of these terrible things. You cannot separate politics from digital rights. If we bury our heads in the sand and just act like there's no politics involved in anything we talk about, that's a problem, because there is some inherent politics in what we do. And ideally, we can be left or right and still agree on the basic principles of digital rights. And that's what we're kind of here for. But we can't pretend that there aren't politics. And so it's important for us to follow these things. Up next, we're going to talk about AI police cameras that were exposed to the internet, which was a pretty entertaining story, as well as maybe going a little more offline with our media and our consumption. But in the meantime, we have this broader AI story I wanted to talk about. I think it's really important to share this story, mainly because I think people see AI as only a new technology, and they don't think as much about the industry and the people behind it and how much money is going into it and is still riding on it. And actually, I've titled this whole section, AI Industry Acting Like Big Oil, because I think that's the best comparison. Essentially, what it's led to is Silicon Valley's most powerful investors and executives are backing a political committee created to support pro-AI candidates in the 2026 midterms and to quash a philosophical debate that has divided the tech industry on the risk of artificial intelligence overpowering humanity. Now, this super PAC is called Leading the Future, and its initial funding has more than $100 million, and backers including Greg Brockman, the president of OpenAI, his wife, Anna Brockman, and influential venture capitalist firm Andreessen Horowitz. Don't know how to say that because I can't say I've heard of them before. The reason I'm bringing this up is I know I just talked about politics and how it's inherently integrated with a lot of the things we talk about, but it's really, really important to follow this kind of stuff. So not only are they setting up a super PAC that's designed to literally influence politics and the people who are deciding what is and isn't regulated and how we regulate these things to be only people who are pro-AI outright, which if you can read between the lines on a lot of the stuff, being this pro-AI means that you essentially just want tech companies to do whatever they want to do. And I don't think that that will get us very far. And you might be wondering why this is happening. Well, what's going on is that different people like the New York governor, Kathy Hochul, has signed something called the RAISE Act to help regulate AI safety. This requires large AI developers to publish information about their safety protocols and report safety incidents to the state within 72 hours. And it also creates a new office within the Department of Financial Services to monitor AI development. And it's actually really interesting to try to parse through who believes what, because OpenAI and Anthropic is behind Claude, expressed support for the New York bill while also calling for federal regulation, with Anthropic's head of external affairs, Sarah Heck, telling the New York Times the fact that two of the largest states in the country have now enacted AI transparency legislation signals the critical importance of safety and should inspire Congress to build on them. So these companies, these AI companies, some of the biggest ones seem okay with it, but not everyone in the tech industry has been so supportive. And I'm quoting the article. In fact, a super PAC backed by, again, Andreessen Horowitz and OpenAI president Greg Brockman is looking to challenge Alex Bors, who co-sponsored the bill that we just talked about in, I believe, New York. So the reason why I'm bringing this up, there isn't really a story yet, and that's not really the point of why I'm bringing it up. I'm bringing it up because it's important to see the patterns. Where else do we see these super PACs come up? We see these super PACs come up for things like the big tech industry as a whole. We see them come up for things like big oil. We see them come up for all of these big industries that typically no longer have the public's best interest in mind. And it's important to see behind the scenes what some people who are behind this AI stuff are actually trying to do. And it's just important to follow it, and so that we can all track it and kind of see the behind the scenes inner workings of it. Because I don't think there's much discussion. A lot of people still think that AI is just this thing that you chat with in ChatGPT, and that's kind of all it is. And yeah, a lot of people want to bake that into their services, and we see it everywhere now. But that's not really all it is. There's actually a lot of money behind the scenes. There's a lot of powerful people who are riding on this AI train, and they don't want it to stop. Stay vigilant, stay critical, and I'll be sure to keep you all updated as this develops. All right, so this second story is definitely a hot and charged story. So if you do enter the comment section, please just be aware of that context, and this is a tricky one to cover. In fact, I'm still developing my own thoughts on this. Like, genuinely, I don't always have my thoughts quite figured out on things right away, because this is a pretty messy one. So I'm going to keep the more controversial part of it short, because it's not even the main reason why I'm bringing up the story, because there's a bigger point that I want to make here that actually impacts these companies equally. But many of you might have heard about the Brown University shooting that happened not that long ago. And the shooting suspect wasn't found for quite a long time, but eventually he was found in part due to Flock surveillance security cameras. Now, we've talked a lot about Flock over the years, back when Surveillance Report was on its own channel. Nate and I talked about it a ton, and it's just been a consistent problem across the board. And we've even seen it being abused by certain police officers who were trying to stalk and harass people. And I believe they even mention it in this article here. I believe that was in Georgia, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, there was a case in Georgia here, and you can see it on screen, where there was an audit done that found a police chief was using data from these cameras to stalk and harass people. And he was arrested and charged in November. But still, remember that potential always exists. Anyway, this has created a lot of, discussions about what privacy means. This actually worked for once. I mean, it's easy to look at one incident, of course, and say, oh, so that means it can work. And of course, we look at all of the surveillance technologies that are implemented just universally to all citizens, and how many times does it not work, and how many times does it not help, and how much of a privacy and freedom violation is really going on as a result of it. So these are the questions that I've been asking, and they actually directly asked the guy about this, and he said that if people are worried about this, you have a cell phone, and the cell phone's worse. But also, some people don't have privacy invasive smartphones, and they don't want this either. And his whole point is, if you don't trust law enforcement to do their job, that's actually what you're concerned about, and I'm not going to help people get over that. And that's his quote. So it's pretty dismissive. He's saying, hey, I build the tool works the way I want it to, and if other people abuse it, that's kind of their fault, not mine. And it feels like a very reckless way to build something to me, but also we can't really deny that this did actually work once. So was it worth it? I don't know. But the actual story, and again, that was the more controversial section, this was where things get interesting. And this is where, to me, the real story is, which is Flock, the same people, exposed its AI-powered cameras to the internet, where they literally live streamed themselves going to these cameras and tracking it. So they left 60 of its people tracking Condor PTZ cameras live streaming and exposed to the open internet. So whether or not we trust these technologies and we think that they're good, we think they're bad, it's important to think about how all this data that's been collected has to somehow be secured properly. It was initially discovered by the YouTuber and technologist Ben Jordan and was shared with security researcher John Gainsek Gaines, which just doesn't even sound like a real name, who recently found numerous vulnerabilities in several other models of Flock's automated license plate reader cameras. Again, this is why I think this is the real story, is when you have these powerful surveillance tools, they do not and will not ever have perfect privacy, nor will they ever have perfect security, but the stakes will never get as high as they will with these kinds of tools, especially as they get more sophisticated. So how do we grapple with this as a society? I mean, we can start with basic awareness and how much of a privacy and security concern this stuff is, period, regardless of if everybody who's supposed to have access to the data handles it exactly as they're supposed to, which is already asking a lot. But even if, again, they actually are treating it properly, how can you ensure that an unauthorized third party can't get access to that data and do malicious things with it? That is where, to me, the story really matters. When we look at the extreme side of things, if you're in the camp of like, no, all of this is good, they now have AI bathroom monitors, Welcome to America's new surveillance high schools. That is the headline on this Forbes article. Because yes, schools across the US are rolling out AI-powered surveillance technology, including drones, facial recognition, and even bathroom listening devices. And there's not even any data to prove that they keep kids safe. So what does this look like for our society? What's it look like when we have children feeling like they're being watched even when they go to the bathroom? Is that healthy? They did a survey that said 32% of 14 to 18-year-old students surveyed said they felt like they were always being watched. In focus groups run by the ACLU, students said they felt less comfortable alerting educators to mental health issues and physical abuse as a result of it. And ACLU argues that's a lousy trade-off because kids don't trust people they view as spying on them. It ruptures trust and actually makes things less safe. You can't argue with the results because you're saving lives. So yeah, it's a very interesting discussion. And the main district that's kind of come at the crosshairs of this specific story is the Beverly Hills district. And they're defending this staunchly. They say this is necessary. They say other schools do the same thing. And yeah, it's really messy stuff. And I don't know. I don't know personally where I land on this yet, but I know that AI in the bathrooms is a freaking joke. And I don't need to think about that one twice. And again, my final story that I'm sharing is a part of this overall story too of AI police cameras being exposed to the internet. This happened in Uzbekistan. They also have a nationwide license plate surveillance system, right? Sounds familiar, except this one also was leaked. It was completely left exposed to the internet. Security researcher Anurang Sen, who discovered the security lapse, found the license plate surveillance system exposed online without a password, allowing anyone access to the data within. It's not clear how long the surveillance system has been public, but artifacts from the system show that its database was set up in September 2024 and traffic monitoring began in mid-2025. And of course, it covers a lot more about the data collected. If you're watching what's here on the video, it shows how extensive this is and frankly, how spooky it is. And I don't even think that this is quite as extensive as what Flock does. Kind of my takeaways from these stories. I would hope that it's a pretty universal, all of us can agree situation, that these things are dangerous in the sense that just because of how sensitive the data is that they're collecting, they are very easy targets. And we have seen time and time again that they aren't properly secured. They aren't properly locked down. Third parties get access to the information that they're not supposed to. They're left open to the public. They let YouTubers just go ahead and access them and live stream from them. It is actually crazy how reckless, given how powerful this surveillance really is, how they just released willy-nilly as if privacy and security aren't even a basic consideration for these companies or governments in this case. So I think that's step one. If we are going to ever have any layer of surveillance, why are people going to trust it when all of these data breaches and all of these exploits, and they don't even have basic password protection on them, is how they're being rolled out. So even if all of us think that for whatever reason this technology needs to exist in the world, why would we even embrace it if it's not implemented in a safe, genuinely safe way? And I would hope that most of us can agree on that point. As for the other stuff, like should this stuff be used at all in the first place, all that's kind of a different discussion, but I would hope to at least make a strong point and a strong argument here as to how dangerous it is for us to roll out these really powerful tools that don't even implement basic protections. So think about this stuff when people start pushing these things down your throat, because there are some serious consequences. Now, we don't have a sponsor this week, but I did just want to point everyone towards the fact that we have a really cool program called the Techlorians, and it's a way that you can support what we do, and we can also say thanks in some really fun ways. First, we have a private Signal group, and so if you want to chat with other people in real time and get access to myself and Tori, we're not on there 24/7, but we're on there pretty consistently. That's where we're at. And also, you're going to get access to some early content when we're able to publish things early that's not as timely. So things like Techlore Talks interviews and stuff like that will be published early for all of you. And if you're not on there yet, we'd be happy to have you in 2026 or before 2026 if you listen to this beforehand. So check it out down in the description. And now back to the podcast. All right. So this is kind of just a fun holiday story for me. It's not, actually about holidays per se, but I think it's a good time to talk about this. So pretty much the overall, of course, always check out the show notes so you guys can read this on your own. But the whole concept is that there's this uptick right now in self-hosted stuff, self-hosted media servers, offline media, people who just want to host their own libraries again. And I think that there's a lot of legitimacy to this, and there's something to be said about it, even from a digital rights perspective. I want to start with the problems of streaming streaming services. When you are paying for a subscription service, yes, a lot of them are quite convenient, but you're giving up all of your freedom and you never actually own anything anymore. A really quick analogy I like to share with people is that if you have your own book, you have your own DVD, you can watch it, you can use it, it's fantastic. You can play it whenever you want to, you can take it with you anywhere you go. And if someone, a friend, a family member asks you to listen to it or watch it or read it, you can just lend it to them. And there's something really beautiful about actually owning things. But when you use streaming services, this no longer exists. It's just not a thing. And this is actually a pretty common issue on the internet, even with ebooks. If you buy a book on Amazon and you delete your Amazon account, there's no way to actually download and keep your books anymore. You can't share your book with a friend easily like this either. And recently, I knew someone who had Disney Plus and we traveled out of country, and you can download things beforehand on Disney Plus, right? So you could download it and then you get there and you know what? The download expires and then they don't let you download it again because now you're out of the region. So you don't even own things that you download on your devices anymore. And it's just a mind-blowing concept. So I think that a lot of people are saying no to this. Like, I actually like owning something. And besides the ethical and just nice reasons to own things that you can physically have and rent and give to people or do whatever you want with them, there's a lot of good stuff here. And, they even say in the article, there's lots of advantages to just cassettes. Unlike vinyl records, tapes are compact and super portable. And unlike streaming, you never have to worry about a giant company suddenly taking them away from you. They can be easily duplicated, shared, and made into mixtapes using equipment you find in a junk shop. And then on the other end of things, streaming seeks to virtually eliminate what techies like to call user friction, which might sound like a good thing, but as the article says, turning all creative works into a seamless and unlimited flow of data, pouring out of our devices like water from a digital faucet. Everything becomes content flattened into aesthetic buckets and laser targeted by perfect fit algorithms to feed our addictive impulses. Thus, the act of listening to music is transformed from a practice of discovery and communication to a hyper-personalized mood board of machine-optimized vibes. And I would add to this personally, designed to keep you on the platform as long as possible. That's why the algorithm is there. Personally, the way I like to look at this myself is what puts me in control. If I have my own CDs, DVDs, and I put on something, it's because I want to listen to that specific thing. Yes, you can do this with Spotify, but it's far harder. On Spotify, a lot of times, it starts auto-playing music when you're done. It'll auto-suggest things. Sometimes it's harder to find specific albums and you get promoted these playlists or these stations first. And so I think it's really important to think about that. And even if you do everything right on Spotify, nowadays you're going to get recommended like TikTok style videos and podcasts and all these different things, which is just not even what a lot of people want to use the platform for. I just think it's a really great article that everybody should read and maybe share with someone that you know. This is a really accessible, not that technical article. And here's what the author says. What if we simply decided to consume less media, allowing us to have a deeper appreciation for the art that we choose to spend our time with it? What if instead of having an on-demand consumer mindset that requires us to systematically strip art of all its human context, we developed better relationships with creators and built new structures to support them? What if we developed a politics of refusal, the ability to say enough is enough, and recognize that we aren't powerless to the whims of rich tech CEOs who force this dystopian garbage down our throats while claiming it's inevitable? And I just thought that was a beautiful statement for all of us, especially during the holidays when consumerism is at an all-time high. I think the sentence enough is enough is all you need to say for some of this stuff. And when you get asked why, when you get asked for alternatives, you can simply say enough is enough. I just don't want to deal with this anymore. I just want things to be simple and I want to be in control again. And I'm maybe expressing myself and my own frustrations through this mic right now. But it's been feeling really real. Like this year, I feel like enshittification just makes everything that I find dear just so much worse over time. And it's just really frustrating. And so reading this meant a lot to me personally. I'm really glad they wrote it. I think it was a beautiful article. And I think it's a really good reminder on the holidays. And I think everybody should read it. So check out the show notes, give it a good read. And I'd be curious for your guys' thoughts in the comments if you're on YouTube or if you're in the audio version. I guess you can always join YouTube for comments or PeerTube as well if you guys want to check us out on techlore.tv. And actually, I'm recording this later, but I'm cutting it into this story because I think it's highly relevant. So there's a person here, right? They have a blog called Hey.Paris, and they wrote this article as a desperate measure. I'll tell you more about it in a second, but they were a loyal customer for nearly 30 years for Apple. They have authored technical books on Apple's own programming languages in Objective-C and Swift, and they've spent tens upon tens upon tens, that's a quote from their blog, of thousands of dollars on devices, apps, conferences, and services. They've been locked out of their personal and professional digital life with no explanation and no recourse. Now, what happened here is they went to a major brick and mortar store. I don't know what it is, but maybe something like Best Buy. And they were sold an Apple gift card that Apple seemingly took offense to and locked them out of their entire Apple ID, effectively breaking my devices and my iCloud account, Apple Developer ID, and everything associated with it. And they have no recourse. And what really happened here is for some reason, they thought it was some stolen gift card or something. And so, yes, and they even say they have the receipt for the card. The card was legitimately purchased. It's not from eBay. They've contacted the retailer. Yes, they have backups. No, they don't know why parts of the account still kind of work and parts don't. No, they didn't write this with AI. And there's just a lot more information here. But the reason I want to quickly bring this story up is that it's so easy to feel convinced that you actually own things on these devices. But the reality is that you're always still victim to a lot of what can happen. So I think another lesson to really share here is what would happen if you got locked out of maybe a big ecosystem that you're a part of? What would happen then? Do you have that data saved elsewhere? Do you have an alternative service you can quickly migrate to? What would happen in that situation? Because, this person has a lot of clout. They have a blog. They were able to get a lot of traction and make a lot of headlines. But that might not be you. You might not have this kind of stuff, and you might not have that kind of ability and that access to information and different people who might help you out here. Now, on the bright side, his account was reinstated, and that's after, it was covered by Apple Insider, the Register. None of that really made an immediate difference. But on the 18th of December, which is exactly a week before we're recording, someone who apparently is part of Apple's executive relations worked with him and eventually got this fixed. Now, if this happened to you, do you think Apple's executive relations is going to be working with you directly? I don't know. And I think that's kind of the point I'm trying to make here. Think about this kind of stuff and what you're really getting yourself into. And for the record, I think ecosystems and all this kind of stuff is perfectly fine. There's nothing inherently wrong with them. You just have to understand some of the consequences that can happen as a result of that. All right, so it is the holiday week. We normally do see a lot less stories, but the Defense Bulletin is still pretty thorough. But there were no major stories this week that I could really cover in depth. And you guys might have noticed that even the ones I picked weren't that crazy. Yeah, let's just dive into this. So first off, there was hundreds of Cisco customers who are vulnerable to a new Chinese hacking campaign. This is mainly towards enterprise customers who use some of Cisco's popular products. They didn't say how many of its customers had already been hacked or who was running the systems, but security researchers say there are hundreds of Cisco customers who could potentially be hacked. The vulnerability was a 0-day, and so if you run any of this, go ahead and check it out in the show notes. Also, more on the admin side of things, FortiCloud SSO devices were exposed to remote attacks, and that impacted over 25,000 devices also because of a vulnerability. This impacts FortiOS, FortiProxy, and FortiSwitch Manager, and FortiWeb through a different vulnerability. So check that out if you use any of that stuff. There's a new critical WatchGuard Firebox firewall flaw that was exploited in attacks. So if you use WatchGuard, there's also a vulnerability there that you should check out. HP has warned of a maximum severity RCE flaw in its OneView software. Apparently, this is a management software that helps IT admins streamline operations and automate the management of servers, storage, and networking devices from a centralized interface, and there is a critical security vulnerability. So make sure to patch that as soon as possible if you work with that software. MongoDB is another IT admin one, and there is a vulnerability there. So check that out in the show notes if you want to learn more about it. Okay, this one impacts more than just IT admins, and it's a new UEFI flaw that enables a pre-boot attack on motherboards from Gigabyte, MSI, Asus, and ASRock. So if you use any of those motherboards, you should probably look into this because this is one that actually is a little bit concerning. Now, each of the 4 major companies already put a security advisory notice that you can find in the original Bleeping Computer article, but the Asus one was going to detail all the different motherboards that were impacted, as well as MSI, as well as Gigabyte, as well as ASRock. Users are recommended to check for available firmware updates and install them after backing up important data. So make sure to look into this if you have any kind of computer with these motherboards. And yeah, just get that fixed ASAP, or get that fixed Ace Rock. That was horrible. Okay, let's just move on and ignore that. So tech provider for NHS England has confirmed a data breach. So now we're now in a data breach section. They said there was minimal impact on the company's services and the company's frontline clinical services remain unaffected and operational. To clarify, this is a healthcare tech company for England's National Health Services. The University of Sydney has suffered a data breach exposing thousands of students and staff information. The number cited is 27,000 people. And so if you are in any way associated with the University of Sydney, you should definitely check that out to learn more. Baker University has also said that a 2024 data breach, so this is from before, has now impacted 53,000 people. Apparently it took them that long. They were counting people by hand, by each person at a time. They stole the personal health and financial information of over 53,000 individuals. And so if you want to learn more about that, and if you're in any way related to Baker University, make sure to check that out. And again, please remember that some of these data breaches happen and they don't say anything for apparently years, and they don't give you enough information to actually figure out what to do. So it's always good to be proactive with your protections. University of Phoenix had a data breach that impacts nearly 3.5 million individuals. And this is from the Clop ransomware gang. So check that out if, again, you are in any way associated with the Phoenix University. Aflac, yes, the duck insurance company. If you guys know what I'm talking about, you'll see it on screen as well. This insurance giant had hackers steal personal and health data of 22.6 million people. So this is a pretty bad one. This is a company says it has around 50 million customers, which means that half of its customers were impacted by this. So if you have Aflac, check this out. Nissan said thousands of customers were exposed in a Red Hat data breach. And specifically, it affected 21,000 customers who purchased vehicles or received services at Nissan in Fukuoka. I think I said that right, in Japan. And they also had some information leaked as well. Moving on, Romanian Water Authority was hit by a ransomware attack over the weekend. I want to remind people that a lot of these data breaches and attacks don't just impact data and things in the cloud. They also impact real things like water management, like hospitals, like schools, like critical infrastructure. So really keep that in mind when you hear about these data breaches. This specific one impacted 1,000 computer systems at the National Water Authority and 10 of its 11 regional offices. Fortunately for this one, systems controlling water infrastructure were unaffected. So this one did only impact basic data, but keep in mind, that's not always going to be the situation. Really quick here, France's postal and banking services were disrupted by a suspected DDoS attack. So if you had any downtime at all with that, that's probably why that was happening. This one was pretty interesting to read about. So there's a new Mac Sync malware dropper, which evades macOS gatekeeper checks. The easiest way to explain macOS gatekeeper is it's almost like macOS's built-in antivirus. So essentially what happened here is they had a valid certificate that was notarized by Apple, and it was able to bypass gatekeeper. Now, after it was reported, Apple did revoke it. Now, what this did is it could steal iCloud keychain credentials, passwords stored on web browsers, system metadata, cryptocurrency wallet data, and files from the file system. So this would have been really bad if you installed it. And it's a good reminder to only install trusted software that you actually think is safe. Pretty rare for the macOS ecosystem. So I hope this doesn't become a pattern. WebRat malware spread via fake vulnerability exploits on GitHub. So the WebRat malware is a backdoor with info stealing capabilities that emerged at the beginning of the year. It was normally found in pirated games like Roblox, Counter-Strike, and Rust. However, now it's just in GitHub repositories that claim to host proof of concept exploits for recently disclosed vulnerabilities, which is very ironic. So just be careful with this. Remember that GitHub also is not a foolproof platform. Just be very careful about what you install in your systems, guys. And on that note, there's malicious extensions in the Chrome Web Store that steals user credentials. If you want to know what they are, it's called Phantom Shuttle, and it's posing as plugins for a proxy service to hijack user traffic and steal sensitive data. Apparently, at the time of writing, the extension is still up. So you could still have this installed on your system. I hope none of us listening have Phantom Shuttle installed, but if you do, please delete it. It is not a good thing to have installed. All right, and now we're going to get into the service updates. And actually, I saw a comment from somebody who said, I missed the free and open source section. Honestly, this is kind of the free and open source section. It's just slightly rebranded, but almost all the updates in this section are the same thing as what the free and open source section used to be. So just to quickly go through it, Firefox, after some of the backlash, we talked about how Firefox is trying to roll out some new AI features. They're just going to have a basic AI kill switch to just completely disable all AI features. So if you just want to just set a toggle and say, I don't want any AI, it'll just turn all of it off. And I think that's a really good compromise. It allows them to still try out their new AI stuff, see if it connects with the people who want that AI stuff, and still have some kind of AI AI alternative to all these different browsers, and it still lets anyone who doesn't want any of it just turn it off. So I think that's a pretty good compromise. Now, the other alternative, if you don't want any of it, Waterfox has simply just pushed back altogether against this AI stuff, and they just are doing no AI whatsoever. And that's probably going to be the case for most Firefox forks. I'm sure Mulvad browser, Tor browser, Waterfox, and all these different projects are not going to be doing any like inherent AI features. This is a really quick story, but apparently there are more than 1,000 Docker hardened images, they're called DHI, that are now freely available in open source for software builders under the Apache 2.0 license. So this is something to look into if you ever use Docker or any Docker images and you want something a little bit more hardened. Apparently, that's open source now, so that's pretty cool. Okay, this is really quick. Mulvad, the VPN provider, has announced Godaton. Man, they name things so weirdly there. But it's the future of WireGuard at Mulvad VPN. It's pretty much their own WireGuard implementation written in Rust. Tuda Mail and Tuda Calendar have both been improved to help boost productivity and work better. Pretty much they released autosave drafts and also a badge counter on iOS, which I didn't know they didn't have already actually, but I'm glad they finally got that. And also they have a multi-day view in the widget and drag and drop to nest folders. So a lot of little improvements. So check that out in the show notes if you want to learn more if you're a Tuda customer. Image is it's spelled IMMICH. It's a self-hosted open source photo and video management solution. It's actually from Fudo, and they introduced version 2.4, which introduces a command palette. It allows users to navigate and execute actions in the web app via keyboard shortcuts and some other changes. So if you use Image, go ahead and check that out. AdGuard for Mac version 2.18 supports 3 new AI browsers and macOS 12 Plus. So if you use any AI-powered browsers, now you have an ad blocker in those as well, which is interesting. So yeah, check that out. If you use those, I am not, so I can't report how they work. This is really quick. The Tor project did a very fast code audit. So if you want to learn more, check that out. It was done by 7A Security. Kdenlive is a open source video editor for Linux, NLE, and they released version 25.12, which adds a flexible docking system, new layouts, and a menu overhaul, which looks pretty cool. CubesOS hit version 4.3 and it was released with Fedora 41, Zen 4.19, and updated templates as well. So yeah, pretty exciting stuff. And I'm still waiting for a prettier desktop environment, but that's just me. Elementary OS 8.1 is out with over 1,100 fixes, Linux 6.14, ARM64 support, and more. So if you're using Elementary OS, check that out to learn more about that. And then Postmarket OS, the mobile operating system, released version 25.12, which brings Alpine 3.23 base, GNOME 49, Plasma Mobile 6.5, and some kernel updates if you want to learn more about that. All right, Darktable 5.4, which adds a new sharpening tool, multiple workspace support, and a new tone mapper, which is pretty awesome. This is a minor one, but Parrot OS is a security-focused Linux distribution, and they are migrating from Mate to KDE Plasma. And that, my friends, concludes this week's Techlore Surveillance Report. It was definitely a bit of a lighter week, and that is okay, because I have to edit it on Christmas week, so I can't say I'm complaining. But hopefully we still had enough content for all of you, so that you all still got the news from the last week. If this analysis helped you reclaim control, become a Techlorian again by visiting the show notes. All support is very appreciated, and I've been loving all of the new people I've been seeing on our Ghost. So thank you all for joining and being a part of our new ecosystem. Again, you'll gain access to our exclusive communities and get key perks, all while keeping this podcast and everything else we do at Techlore growing. You can also support what we're doing by just leaving a rating on Spotify, Apple, even on YouTube, just giving a like. Oh, just went into dark mode. I look like something changed here in the video. And also you can just share the episode with someone that you know. You can spread digital freedom. You can talk about these things with your family members. Just do what you can to spread the word. Thank you all for listening, and I'll see you next time on Surveillance Report.